There's a thread I keep going back to because I can't shake what happened in it. A guy had finally done it, saved up for the better part of a year, and mounted a brand new thermal scope on his rifle. The kind you trust on a cold night when there's a coyote working the edge of your property and you've got one chance to make the shot. And he didn't cheap out. He bought a name. A premium brand, the one that gets recommended in every magazine and every gear roundup, the one with the reputation. He paid right around $3,000 for it. Glass clean, mounted up, proud as hell. He posted a photo of it and asked what people thought, and one reply gutted him. Somebody who clearly knew the industry wrote back a single sentence that changed how that man looked at his $3,000 scope forever. He said, "You know the sensor inside, that is the exact same core as the $1,800 scope, right? Same module, same factory, same manufacturer in China. You paid $1,200 for the logo on the side. $1,200 for the logo. And here's the part that got me, the part I want you to sit with for a second. That man did everything right. He researched, he read the reviews, he bought the respected brand instead of the cheap one, because that's what you're supposed to do. And the thing that was actually doing the seeing, the actual heart of the device, the sensor that turns heat into a picture on the screen, was identical to a scope he could have bought for almost $2,000 less. He didn't get a better sensor, he got a better sticker. I want to tell you exactly how that happens, because it is not an accident, it is not bad luck, and that man is not stupid. It is a system. And by the end of this video, I'm going to do two things for you. I'm going to show you which premium thermal scopes are running the same sensor core as the budget ones, so you never pay the logo tax again. And I'm going to show you the small handful of thermal scopes where the high price is actually buying you something real, because they do exist. And the difference between those two groups is the most important thing nobody selling you a scope wants you to understand. Now, I need to tell you where I'm coming from, because it matters. I'm not an engineer. I never built one of these. What I am is somebody who spent years on the retail side of this business, behind the counter, selling optics to hunters. I've handled the scopes. I've read the dealer sheets the customers never see. I've watched a guy put a $3,000 thermal on a credit card and walk out feeling like he'd bought the best. And I knew, standing right there, that the four-figure scope 2 shelves down had the same eye inside it. That's the seat I'm talking to you from, not the factory floor, the sales floor. And from the sales floor, you see the markup with a clarity that's honestly a little disturbing. So let's start with the question in the title. What is actually inside a $3,000 thermal scope? A thermal scope is doing something genuinely amazing. Every object warmer than absolute zero gives off infrared energy, heat you can't see with your eyes. A thermal scope has a sensor that reads that heat and paints it as an image. The piece that does that is called a microbolometer. It's a tiny grid of detector elements, and the resolution you hear thrown around, 256, 384, 640, 1280, that's how many of those elements are on the grid. More elements, more detail. That sensor grid, packaged up with the board that processes its signal and the shutter that calibrates it, is what the industry calls the core. The core is the heart. Everything else, the housing, the screen, the buttons, the battery, the lens out front, all of it exists to serve that core. Now, I went into this expecting to tell you that core was dirt cheap. You've probably heard the claim floating around that the sensor in your scope costs like $100. And I want to be straight with you, because the easy version of this video is to just repeat that and let you get mad. But it's not true, and I'm not going to lie to you to make a better thumbnail. Here's the real version. There's a bare sensor chip, just the raw grid of detector elements, no processing board, no shutter, no lens, nothing. And that bare chip, bought 1,000 at a time, that can get down into cheap territory. But that bare chip is useless. It can't make a picture by itself. The moment you build it into an actual working core, with the processing board and the calibration shutter and the interface, even a low-resolution one costs more than $100, and the good 640 resolution core that goes in a real hunting scope runs somewhere between $400 and $800 on the open distributor market. So the honest number isn't $100, it's a few $100s. And the brands buying 10,000 at a time pay less than that, not more. Which, if you think about it, is actually worse for them, not better. Because a few $100s of sensor inside a $3,000 scope still leaves an enormous gap. And that gap is the whole story. But here's the first thing that should really bother you. The core in your scope was almost certainly not made by the company whose name is on the side. The brand you bought did not make the sensor. In most cases, the brand you bought did not make much of anything except the decisions about what to charge you. Let me give you the number that reframes this entire industry. As of 2024, Chinese manufacturers produced about 60% of all the thermal image sensors sold in the entire world. 60%. The thermal imaging market crossed $7 billion, and the single biggest force pushing it there was China. And in the specific corner of that market that you and I care about, civilian hunting thermal, the concentration is even tighter than that 60% number suggests, because the hunting scopes don't pull from 60 different Chinese factories. They pull, overwhelmingly, from 2. There's a guy who works in this trade who put it about as plainly as it can be put. He said, 9 out of 10 thermals are made by Yantai iRay or Guide Sensmart, 2 companies. Yantai iRay, which sells under the brand name InfiRay, and Guide, which you'll see as Guide Sensmart. Between those 2 Chinese manufacturers, you are looking at the actual origin of the vast majority of hunting thermal scopes sold in America, no matter what name is printed on the tube. So now think about what that means for the brand names you trust. InfiRay's cores don't just go into InfiRay scopes, they go into other brands. Bearing Optics, Rix, Nossi Pix, which is actually an InfiRay subsidiary. These are separate companies with separate logos and separate price tags on separate shelves, and the thing doing the seeing inside them traces back to the same source in Yantai, China. And the other one, Guide, works the same way. Guide Sensmart is a massive Chinese thermal manufacturer, and it doesn't just sell scopes under its own name, it builds cores and modules that end up inside other people's products too. So when you stand in the aisle and you see 8, 10, 12 different thermal brands, and you assume that's 8, 10, 12 different companies competing to build you the best sensor, the reality is closer to this. Most of those badges are buying their eye from one of these 2 Chinese houses, then differentiating themselves with software and styling and a story. The competition you think you're benefiting from, the competition that's supposed to drive quality up and price down, mostly isn't happening at the level that matters. It's happening at the level of marketing. The eye is the same. The pitch is what's different. And it's not just the sensor that gets shuffled between badges. The brands themselves play this game. Look at the budget end of the American thermal market. There's a company called AGM that shows up everywhere now. When you look at who founded it, it's the same people who previously founded and built ATN and Armasight, 2 other brands you'll see on the shelf right next to it. Same founders, 3 brands, all competing for your money in the same aisle as if they were rivals. The whole shelf can be 1 or 2 families of people pulling from 1 or 2 Chinese factories, dressed up to look like a free market with a dozen real competitors. It is not a dozen competitors. It never was. This is the logo tax, and I want to be very precise with you about what I'm claiming, because precision is the whole game here. I am not telling you that 2 of these scopes are the same scope. They are not. A scope built around a shared sensor module can still have a different housing, different software, a different display, a different warranty, different quality control. Those things are real, and sometimes they matter. What I'm telling you is that the single most expensive, most important component, the core, the eye, is frequently the exact same module from the exact same factory across scopes that are priced $1,000 or $2,000 apart. You are very often paying a premium price for a premium logo wrapped around a mid-priced eye. Now, I have to be honest with you about the wholesale numbers I just gave you, because honesty is the only thing this channel has to sell. Those module prices are what I can see on the open distributor market, the listings any business can pull up. They are not the secret signed contract between InfiRay and a major brand. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you the exact bill of materials of your specific scope, because I don't have it and nobody outside that company does. What I can tell you, and stand behind completely, is that the eye inside a $3,000 hunting scope cost the brand at least a few $100s, and very likely a good deal less. And the rest of that $3,000 is housing, software, marketing, warranty, import duty, and margin. Mostly margin. So that's the price gap story, and it's real. But while I was digging into who actually makes these cores, I found something that goes way past logo tax. Something I did not expect, and something that Given everything happening in the world right now, you deserve to know before you spend a dollar. Stay with me, because this is the part of the video that matters most. Before I get to it, one quick thing, and then I'll leave you alone. If this is already changing how you think about that scope on your wish list, the single most useful thing you can do is hit subscribe, because the entire reason this channel exists is to pull the curtain back on this stuff before you spend the money, not after. That's it. Back to it. Remember the name Yantai iRay, the Chinese manufacturer behind the InfiRay brand, the company whose sensor cores sit inside a huge share of the hunting thermals sold in this country. On May 1st, 2024, the United States government sanctioned them. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control put Yantai iRay technology on the sanctions list. It was part of a sweep of nearly 300 designations aimed at the supply chain feeding Russia's war. And the reason given for iRay specifically was that the company was operating in the technology sector of the Russian Federation, supplying Russia-based end users with items including telescopic thermal sights and military thermal imagers. Read that again. Thermal weapon sights. The same fundamental technology that's sitting on the rail of an American hunter's rifle, that company was sanctioned for supplying to the Russian military. When that news hit, InfiRay branded products got pulled from Amazon, and the American distributor scrambled to explain the corporate structure, which is genuinely complicated, and I'm going to walk through it carefully because if you take one wrong fact from this video, it'll be this one, and I'm not going to let that happen. The entity that got sanctioned is Yantai iRay, the military-facing arm. The consumer products you'd actually buy, the InfiRay outdoor scopes, are sold in the US through a distributor, and they come from what is technically a separate subsidiary under the same corporate parent, a parent company called Raytron. The distributor's position is that the sanctions hit the military entity, not the commercial outdoor business, and so it doesn't affect the hunting scopes. So here's the careful, accurate, defensible version, and it's the only version I'll say. The sensor in a large share of American hunting thermal scopes comes from the same Chinese corporate family that the United States government sanctioned for arming Russia with thermal weapon sights. That is a documented fact. The Treasury designation is public record. I'm not telling you your specific scope is illegal. It isn't. You can buy these tomorrow. I'm telling you where the technology comes from, and I'm telling you that premium American brand on the box does not mean the eye inside it came from a place you'd be comfortable with if you knew. A lot of hunters would care about that. A lot of hunters had no idea. Now you do. And it's not just iRay. The other giant of this market, the surveillance side of it, runs straight into the same kind of problem. Hikmicro is the outdoor and thermal optics brand connected to Hikvision, the Chinese surveillance camera company. And Hikvision is one of the most blacklisted companies in America. It's named in the National Defense Authorization Act. The FCC banned authorization of its equipment in 2022, and the courts upheld that ban. Now, I want to be fair and precise again, because the easy lie here is tempting, and I won't tell it. Those bans target Hikvision's video surveillance and telecom gear on national security grounds. I have not seen anything that says a private citizen can't buy a Hikmicro hunting scope, and I'm not going to tell you that you can't. What I'm telling you is that the parent company behind one of the big thermal optics brands is on multiple U.S. security blacklists for its surveillance business. That's the company. That's who's making the eye. And then the government noticed the rest of it too, and this part affects what you can even do with the scope you own. Thermal is export-controlled technology. There's a rule you'll hear hunters repeat, that anything under 9 Hz refresh rate is fine, and anything over it is restricted. And people treat that 9 Hz line like a magic password that makes a scope legal to take anywhere. It is not. The truth is that the refresh rate is just one trigger in one set of export rules, and thermal weapon sights stay heavily controlled no matter what the refresh rate is. What that means in plain English is that you generally cannot hop on a plane and take your thermal scope to a hunt in another country without dealing with U.S. export law first, and people have gotten into real trouble assuming otherwise. So this is technology our government treats as a weapon, sourced from companies our government has sanctioned and blacklisted, marked up and sold to you with a friendly logo and a lifetime warranty sticker. Sit with how strange that is. So step back and look at the whole board. The majority of the world's thermal sensors are Chinese. The hunting market runs on 2 Chinese manufacturers above all others. One of them shares a corporate parent with an entity sanctioned for arming Russia. The other shares a corporate parent that's blacklisted up and down the US government. The whole thing is export controlled like the weapon technology it actually is. And all of it gets wrapped in American and European brand names, marked up to $3,000 and $4,000 and sold to you as premium. The logo tax isn't just costing you money, it's hiding where the thing actually comes from. Now, I promised you two things at the start, and I'm a man of my word. I told you I'd show you how to stop paying the logo tax, and I told you there's a small group of scopes where the high price actually buys you something real. Let's deliver both, because complaining about a problem without giving you the way out is exactly the kind of empty content I started this channel to fight. First, how to stop overpaying. The trick is to stop shopping for the logo and start shopping for the core. When you're comparing two thermal scopes, the questions that actually decide image quality are the sensor resolution, the pixel pitch, which is how small and tightly packed those detector elements are, the sensitivity rating, which you'll see listed as NETD, and lower is better there, and the refresh rate. Let me make that concrete, because spec sheets are designed to make your eyes glaze over. Pull up two scopes you're deciding between side by side and ignore the brand, ignore the price, ignore the marketing words like tactical and pro and elite that mean absolutely nothing. Just line up those four numbers. If one scope is a 384 resolution at 17 micron pitch, and the other is also a 384 at 17 micron pitch, with the same NetD and the same refresh, those two scopes are looking at that Coyote with what is functionally the same eye, even if one of them costs $1,800 and the other costs $3,000. When the core specs match and the price doesn't, you found the logo tax. Stop right there. Buy the cheaper one, or at least make the expensive one prove what the extra money is actually for. Make the salesman tell you what the extra $1,200 does in specifics, and watch how fast he runs out of real answers and starts talking about the brand, the heritage, the warranty, anything but the sensor. Because he can't talk about the sensor. The sensor is the same, and on some level he knows it. Because sometimes, and this is the honest other half, the extra money is buying something real. Here's what legitimately separates a more expensive scope from a cheaper one with the same sensor. A better objective lens, and that's a real cost because the lens is made of germanium, which is one of the few materials transparent to infrared. And germanium is its own geopolitical headache. About 60% of the world's germanium comes from China, and over the last couple of years, China put export controls on it, then went all the way to an outright ban on exports to the United States, before suspending that ban more recently. While that was happening, the price of germanium in the United States ran to nearly double the price inside China. So a genuinely good germanium lens is real money, and it's getting more expensive, not less. Better image processing and software can be worth paying for. The algorithms that clean up the picture are part of what you're buying. An integrated laser rangefinder is a real feature with real cost. And the housing, the durability, the recoil resistance, the waterproofing, those matter when the thing is bolted to a rifle that kicks. And then there's the warranty, and you need to read this part of the fine print because it's where they get you on the back end. Take one of the most respected names in the business. Their optics and the structural housing are warranted for the lifetime of the original owner, which sounds incredible. But read the next line. The electronic systems and components are warranted for 3 years. The lifetime warranty is on the metal tube. The expensive, failure-prone electronic guts, the actual thermal core, the part you're really paying for, that's covered for 3 years. After that, you're on your own with a several $1,000 device and a sensor that came from a sanctioned supply chain. And speaking of the back end, watch the recurring traps, because the price on the box is not the last dollar you'll spend. A lot of these scopes use proprietary batteries, $100 packs you can only buy from the manufacturer, and on some models, the internal battery can only be replaced at an authorized service center, which means one day, after the warranty's gone, a dead battery turns your $4,000 scope into a paperweight that you have to box up, mail away, and pay to revive, and the firmware. On some popular models, once you update the firmware, you cannot go back. There's no downgrade button. If an update makes your image worse, and owners have reported exactly that an update left their picture looking worse than before, you're stuck with it. On other models, if you bought the version without Wi-Fi, you can't update at all, which means the scope you paid full price for is functionally frozen the day a newer firmware drops. You don't own a finished product. You own a subscription to whatever the manufacturer decides to push to it, and you can't even cancel. Here's the proof that paying more doesn't buy you out of the headaches. There was a hunter who bought one of the premium scopes, well over $4,000, top of a respected lineup. And he came online furious because the battery compartment was designed so poorly that under recoil, it would lose contact, and the scope would shut off every single time he pulled the trigger. His fix on a $4,000 optic was to put tape on it. Tape to hold the battery in. His words were, more or less, that junk is junk, no matter the price. $4,000, and the field expedient repair was a piece of tape wrapped around the battery cap. So no, the premium price is not a guarantee of anything. Sometimes it's just a bigger number printed on a thing with the exact same problems as the cheap one and the exact same eye inside. So what should you actually do? If you want the honest framework, here it is, and it comes down to deciding what you're optimizing for. If your priority is value, find the resolution and the specs you actually need for the distances you actually shoot, and then buy the cheapest scope that hits those specs from a seller with a real warranty and real support, and accept that the eye inside it is probably Chinese, because at this point, almost all of them are. There's no shame in that. You're just refusing to pay extra for a logo wrapped around the same part. But if your priority is keeping this technology out of the Chinese supply chain we just walked through, that path exists, and I'm going to tell you the truth about what it costs. There are scopes built on Western sensor cores. The most respected American makers build their thermal scopes around American-made sensor cores, machined and assembled here in the United States. And a couple of European brands build around a French sensor manufacturer instead of a Chinese one. Those scopes are real. They are genuinely not running the two Chinese cores that dominate everything else. And they will cost you. We are talking $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 and up, not $3,000. That is the actual price of getting out of the supply chain. Most hunters won't pay it, and I'm not going to pretend most hunters should. But now you know that the cheaper number isn't just a cheaper scope. It's a choice about where your money and your technology come from. And you get to make that choice with your eyes open, which is the only thing I've ever wanted for you. That guy on the forum, the one who paid $3,000 for a name, he didn't get robbed exactly. He got a working thermal scope. It sees heat, it'll kill coyotes. It does the job just fine. What he didn't get was the thing he thought he was paying for. He thought $3,000 bought him a fundamentally better eye than the $1,800 scope on the next shelf. It didn't. It bought him the same eye, from the same factory, from the same corporate family, our own government sanctioned for arming Russia, wrapped in a nicer logo with a fatter margin baked into every single dollar over the cost of the budget version. He paid for the sticker and the story. The eye was always the same. He paid $3,000 for a logo. Don't be the next guy who does. If you want to see exactly how this same game gets played in the regular daytime rifle scope world, where 4 different price tiers all come off the same production line in Japan and get sold to you as if they're different classes of glass, watch that video next. It's the one that started this whole channel, and it will change how you read a scope price for the rest of your life.